I'm going to go ahead and make a basic part again, as we usually do here. So I'm going to make a circle, and I'm going to pad it up a fair amount. So we get out of here, pad this up. How about 100? Okay. So what I want to talk about is history, timeline of history. So if I were to say add a fillet onto here, I'd add a fillet, and this is going to be real obvious stuff for a second, but this fillet came after I made the pad, right? And if I go to edit the pad by double clicking on it, you'll notice that when I double click on it, it doesn't show the fillet. So we're going back in time for a moment to back when we created the pad in order to edit it, okay? So we're going back in time. It's the same thing as right-clicking on this and saying define in work object. So now we're back here. Okay, so we define in work object the most recent one. Make sure that's there. And so then let's say that I went to this sketch right, or that plane right there, and I want to draw a line. So this line, what I'm going to use this line for, I didn't actually need to snap it to that point really. I'm going to, ultimately, is what I want to do is I want to make this pad follow this line. So it's a thing that you can do with a pad. It's in the direction field for it. So if I double click on pad here, it's right here, direction. And so if I were to, have lines or maybe different planes at angles, I could designate what direction this pad goes. By default, it says normal. Now remember, whenever we're in CAD programs, normal doesn't mean that this is normal and the other is abnormal. Normal means perpendicular. So the direction is normal, perpendicular, to the sketch profile that we created. So it's kind of a little extra weird way to think about it, but if I unhide the sketch right here, the sketch is on this plane right here, and so this will go extrude, pad out, perpendicular to that sketch. That's its default behavior. So what I'd like to do is tell it to follow this line. The pad was created, then the edge fillet was, then the sketch was right here with that line. If I edit the pad, it's like me going back in time. Going back in time is like me right-clicking on this and saying define in work object. If I go back in time to when the pad was created, I'll hide this, that line didn't exist. It doesn't exist back in the past. So I'll right click on this, define a work object. So now we're back into the current. And so if I double click on the pad to say follow that line, it's not there. If I come over here and try to pick it, we get this little kind of stop sign sort of thing right here. It says, nope, 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 you can't do it. Well, it won't let me pick it. So what do? Well, one thing we can do is I could make this sketch before I made the pad, or I could make it back in time. And it's kind of some tricky ways to do this. I could move this. I could reorder it. So I go here like this, and then I say that I would like to reorder this after or before pad 1. And I could hit OK, and now that sketch comes before pad 1. Okay, I could do it that way. I could delete everything and start over and make the line first. But just to finish this thought out here, I'd like to point out that as soon as I reordered this, this is one of those strange circumstances where it looks like everything disappeared, and it's very disturbing. But notice the underline. This is why I've been talking a lot about watch the underline. Everything didn't disappear. We've had students where they go, oh man, everything disappeared. I guess I got to make it again. And so they start making it again, and now they've got extra. So you look at the tree over here. There's the pad. It's still there. The edge fillet, it's still there. All I need to do is right click on the most recent one and say define a work object, and everything's back. Okay. So just to finish this part off here and go to the pad and show you what I was talking about. Now the sketch is before the pad as far as the timeline goes, and so now it's available to be picked. So I can pick this, and I can pick that line right there, and now this follows that line. And that's kind of interesting, right? The fillet's kind of wacko at this point, but you see what I mean, right? So let's undo this, and I'll get rid of this sketch. So what if I couldn't, for some reason, bring it back in time like that? What if I didn't want to? Or what if I just plain had a better organizational way to do that? That is the thing I was talking about before, which is the geometrical sets right down here. So if I pick this, it's going to say, give it a name. If you hit OK, it will just call it geometrical set and add it in. So that's going to be fine for right now. So part body and bodies keep history. So this is a story about the difference between the two. I can keep the history here. If I make the pad, then the edge fillet, and the next, and next, and next, one thing is based off the other. And if I needed to use that line that I was trying to do in the future, it wouldn't let me do it because it has time. Okay. The other thing that part bodies have is very obviously this is a solid piece of geometry. That's what we call it. We say it's a solid model. And it's obviously there. But in a geometrical set, you cannot put solid bodies inside of it. It has a very specific purpose. It's for points, like these kind of points, lines, planes, and sketches. Some other things also, but basically not solid geometry. Solid geometry like this does not go in there. It won't even let you do it. Okay. And that's honestly just a little bit of control just to help keep you organized, right? So they're kind of, CATIA is forcing you to stay with good habits, I guess. But the other huge thing is geometrical sets don't have a timeline. So here's what I want to show you. I've made the pad, I've made the edge fillet. So now I'm in the geometrical set, and now I'm going to go in and I'm going to make the sketch. So I'm definitely making it after I've made everything else, right? So I go here and I'll make my line like so, exit out. And now when I go to edit the pad, that line will still be there and it's still available for me to use to angle this feature, you see? So that's kind of all I want to say right now, just as an introduction to this, but we use these things all the time. And as we start to get closer and closer to getting into surface design, I want you to know about these. The geometrical sets are a huge, huge part of the generative shape design, the surface design workbenches in CATIA. So you want to understand how to use them, when to use them. You don't need to make one. You can fill one up and then you can make another one. So we'll talk about that later too. It's like a whole bunch of junk drawers because it just sort of ends up that way sometimes. So that's it for this one. Next one, we'll probably talk about the a little bit more, maybe about the geometrical sets, but I want to get back to how we use all the part bodies along with geometrical sets together.